Very below expectation December payrolls report, which was not only well below the average for 2013, but also the lowest in 3 years with only 74,000 jobs added. Here to give his take on this report is Morningstar's Bob Johnson, our Director of Economic Analysis. Thanks for being here, Bob.
Great to be here today.
You say this report has a few suspicious elements. We're going to talk about that in a second. But even suspicious elements aside, it's a pretty disappointing report. I mean, the suspicious elements can't account for all of it.
Exactly. I mean, it was a weak report. 74,000 is a low number. Almost every category was a disappointment. So I think that it was a weak number, and the only thing that can be said is that the November numbers were revised upward by a pretty substantial amount. So that offsets some of the sting of the number, but by category, by wages, by hours, it was a pretty crummy report.
And some folks have been expecting that the economy is gaining some velocity here going into 2014. A report like this would seem to suggest that there are still quite a few bumps in the road.
You know, it throws an awful lot of cold water on that notion. I really think that, you know, when you look at the data, it's really, everybody's like, oh, we accelerated all this growth. Well, we grew 183,000 jobs on average in 2012, and just 1,000 less, 182,000 in 2013. I mean, where's the growth? Where's this acceleration that everybody's talking about? I mean, even the manufacturing sector that everybody's all so fired up and reads these ISF numbers and thinks that we're doing so great. We added 77,000 manufacturing jobs for the whole year in manufacturing. I mean, that's not a big number. That's not a move the needle type of number. And by the way, that manufacturing number in 2013 was half what the number was in 2012. So clearly these people that keep reading this ISM data and keep hanging their hat on how wonderful manufacturing is doing are looking in all the wrong places.
That said, this report, weak as it was, looked at year over year on an average basis like you do, kind of shows more of the same basically stagnant growth that we've seen for a while.
Yeah, I think that's really the takeaway from this report. And we'll talk about there's a lot of things wrong with this report, a lot of things that make it look very, very suspect. But it was a weak report.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the suspicious elements. A lot of it showed up in the underlying sectors where we either saw strength or weakness.
Yep.
Retail came out as being one of the strongest sectors with 55,000 jobs added, but yet retail was not a particularly strong performer from a sales perspective necessarily in December.
Exactly. I mean, it just doesn't compute. I mean, we look at the retail sales data, and it was the worst Christmas season, holiday season we've had since 2009. And yet it was one of the stronger sectors in the economy. And what's really weird is that the apparel sector was one of the strongest hiring sectors within retail, and apparel has been one of the weakest. And we just saw a lot of numbers yesterday about weak retail data, and I'm afraid that's going to come back and bite us next month, I'm afraid, because we're already hearing Macy's closing stores and doing some layoffs, Dollar General reporting some weakness. So whatever strength we saw in December will probably go away in January, at least in terms of the retail sector. Some of the other sectors may go the other way.
Another suspicious sector was construction. Now, the ADP report, as you recall, showed about 50,000 construction jobs added in December. And here in the government report, we have minus 16,000 total construction jobs lost in December. What's going on with construction then?
You know, I think a lot of it may be weather-related items. The ADP tends to count people as long as they're on the payroll, whether or not they showed up on a given day, and the government data is calculated slightly differently than that.
That's still a big gulf.
Oh, that's a huge gulf, and I can't believe the ADP number was as strong as it was, that they'd actually let the number out. I mean, it's some incredible percentage of construction jobs added in 1 month, in a month when it was snowy and cold and nobody was building anything. Something was either wrong with their seasonal factors or something very odd happened, that somebody switched categories or something, because the number just didn't make any sense. On the other hand, I don't think we lost 16,000 jobs either. I think that some of the architectural billing index numbers that I look at, some of the other data that I look at, suggest that manufacturing is at least holding its own.
And the government report also, another suspicious sector, would suggest that a small army of bookkeepers got pink slips in December.
You know, I don't know what happened there. I mean, this is a category, it's pretty small. It changes 5,000 or 10,000 people in a month. That's a big deal. And we lost 30,000 bookkeeping jobs in 1 month. I mean, that's a really odd number. I mean, it's a steady state thing. You need a bookkeeper whether or not business is a little better or a little worse. And I'm wondering if some people bookkeepers got moved to a temp category, and that's why the temp category looked a little bit better. But 30,000 bookkeepers, that just raises a big red flag that there's something deadly wrong with the employment report this month.
A bit of a strange month to making shifts in your bookkeeping employment.
Yeah.
Government also had some suspicious elements with
Yeah.
the education component.
Yep. In the local government component, that is the local school teachers, there was an actual 13,000 decline in number of teachers. How does that happen? I mean, teachers are generally hired at the beginning of a school year, and generally you don't cut classes in the middle of the year, at least not on the local side. And how we could have lost 13,000 government jobs, local government jobs that way, is hard to fathom, and especially in a world where property tax collections, sales tax collections are getting better. So that number also smelled that something wasn't quite right.
Another sector that maybe wasn't suspicious but was certainly disappointing was healthcare.
Yeah. Both healthcare and education have been key sectors for this recovery, accounting for 20% combined since 2009 of all jobs created. And those markets are kind of falling apart right now, and it really culminated in no growth, zero growth exactly in education and in healthcare for the month of December. And clearly the trends there are not good. Maybe with the Affordable Care Act, maybe that number gets a little better next year in healthcare. But those are certainly weak numbers, been key pillars to growth in the economy that really, I don't know what's going to replace them.
And that education component is a private sector education component in that case?
Yes, that's different than the local government teacher education, which goes in a different bucket. This is the Strayers and the private for pay universities. It's private schools. It's those type of things. Okay. It's not your everyday school.
A couple of other pieces of data didn't look great in the report. The work week and the hours worked went down.
Yeah, on a month-to-month basis, both hours worked actually went down, and on the wages, we actually went up the smallest we've gone up in a long, long time, 0.1%. Again, on a year-over-year basis, those numbers look a little less worrisome. I like to put the employment, the hours worked, and the wages all together in one big package, and we're still trending at about 4% growth there year over year. So again, no disaster in those numbers, and that's why we like to look at the three-month moving average year over year. So again, I think that paints a picture of a steady state, slow growth economy, and I think we're still there.
Okay, so just looking ahead then to 2014, given that you have this disappointing data point at the end of that series now, will you be looking for anything different or any worries about trends in employment as we move into the new year?
Well, I do worry very much about retail. I can't understand why that sector has been as strong as it has in terms of employment in 2013, and certainly with the crummy holiday season when the companies make most of their money, I am very worried about what happens next year. And then you add in the Target mess and what they're going to have to do relative to their business. That all makes for tough things for retail next year. On the other hand, maybe government won't be as big a drag next year. Certainly, I think the bookkeeper thing will disappear as we move into towards tax season anyway, that will be a drag that showed up out of nowhere that should go away. And like I say, the Affordable Care Act remains to be seen what that's going to do to health care. The private education data, I'm afraid that's not going to get a lot better next year. So I'm thinking we're going to get another year of 100, maybe a little better. We'll do 190, 200,000 jobs per month. But certainly not the 250 to be more consistent with the rocket ship escape velocity, 3% GDP growth.
So no changes to your employment forecast at this point, given this report for 2000?
Not at all. 190 to 200K, I average monthly.
All right, Bob.
Year-over-year growth.
Great insights on a very disappointing and interesting, possibly suspicious report for December. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you.
For Morningstar, I'm Jason Stipp. Thanks for watching.